Okay, so we've moved on to page 6 now of the instruction manual, and we can see that we need bag C, and this is section 8, so it's all to do with the steering. So I've got bag C here. Now, this is one of the unique things about the Destiny. And it's the first time that I'm going to have driven a car that has a steering rack instead of your traditional bell cranks. The Destiny actually comes with the rack pre-built, and that's to actually give you an idea, as much as anything, how to set the tension of the rack itself, because we can actually adjust the crush on the bearings via this little adjuster screw here. So that'll clamp that bearing down and make the tolerance either tighter or looser, depending on, you might get a bit of bearing wear or something like that. And then we can tighten it up to bring it back to factory spec. So I can tell you that just feeling it, there's no slop whatsoever when I'm trying to twist this top part, yet it still moves really freely. Okay, so we'll get these other bags opened up. Almost just everything out. So that's all our parts out of bag C, and as you can see, we're going to be building up some turnbuckles, and we've got our servo horns. Comes with a 25 spline, and I would suggest that's a 23 spline for the Sanwa. Obviously you'll have to choose which one to use depending on your radio. Alright, so first things first, we need to put the actual rack together, and what we need is our pillow ball and our spacer. And then on the front of the rack, we're just going to screw this guy in. Again, this is not an area that I would Loctite. I'm really not a huge fan of the Loctite, to be honest. It definitely is needed in some areas, but I've never had something come loose that shouldn't. So it is always a good idea when something does come pre-assembled, just to go over the fasteners, just to make sure that everything is nice and tight and as it should be, which it is. Okay, so the next part that we're going to need to install is the rack mounting. So we're going to need this. We need a couple of, again, our M3 round head, M3 by 6, and looks like what we've got to do is mount this like so. So this is also, they say that this is a quick Ackerman adjustment. So these screws here, we can quickly either move the whole rack forward or back, because what you can see is this hole here is elongated, so we can move the rack forward or back and then just lock it off. So that's a nice easy way, instead of having to pull the shims out of the front of our pillow balls to change our Ackerman, we can just do a quick 1mm adjustment forward and back just by loosening 2 screws, which is really cool. So I'm just going to start in the full back position. Give those a little nip up. Alright, so we're still doing our section 9, assembling our steering. We've got our rack together. Now we need to make up a couple of turnbuckle for our steering arms, and also the arm that comes from the servo to the rack. Now Destiny have done a really beautiful job on these aluminium turnbuckles, super lightweight, nice finish, threads are cut really nice as well. Now again, some people may have been driving for years and didn't know this, others know this straight off, but what you'll see on a lot of turnbuckles is one end will actually have like a little bit of a machine notch in it. Now that signifies, well, on this particular car, that signifies that this end of thread is just your conventional right hand thread. So with turnbuckles you have a right hand thread and then a left hand thread. So that means that as you adjust it, both the tie rods will come in, or if you adjust it the other way, both the tie rods will go out. That's what gives us the ability to change our toe in, toe out, and cambers and whatnot. So if we look at the instruction manual, the first turnbuckle that we're making is the one for the servo to the rack, and this will give us a base point to start from. What I really love using is these aluminium shop pliers to hold these components. This way we don't scratch them up and put big burrs and scores in them. So when building any turnbuckle, we want to make sure that we get both our cups on and an even amount of thread, okay, to achieve the length that we're after. What you will see happen sometimes on some cars is, a guy might wind this one on all the way to the end of the thread, but to achieve his correct length, this one might be only on 3 threads or something like that. So we want to make sure that we wind these on an even amount of turns on both sides. So I'm going to suggest that we start with say 8 turns, and then we'll measure it and then we'll see where we are from there. So I'm just going to start on the regular threaded side. Okay, so here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We'll flip it over and do the left-handed one. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then I'm going to measure it, and it tells us that we're looking for an overall length of 63.5 mil. So 63.5. So at the moment we're at 68. So we've got about 5 mil to wind in. I'm going to wind in 3 turns of each. So this is our left hand one, so 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3. And we'll measure it again. So we're at 65.9, so we're looking for 63.5, so in a bit more. So I'm going to go a full turn on each. So that's 1, and 1. Again, this is just going to get us into the ballpark. We'll probably need to fine tune it depending on how our servo mounts up. Okay, so 64, so we need to go half a turn on each. So half and half. And we're at 63.56. I'm not going to worry about that 0.06. That is close enough for me. Alright, we're going to put the little belt tensioner together now. So those components came in the last bag that we opened. We've got 2 bearings, a screw and a nylon nut. And we're also going to need our selection of M3 shims that were in another bag. Just so you don't end up with these everywhere, I tend to just put just a little nick in the corner of the bag, just enough so that you can squeeze a shim out, but then when you put it in your pit bag you don't end up with shims all over the place. So I'm going to use just a point 0.1 to put between the bearings, and then I'm going to use a 0.2 where it mounts to the plastic. So we want to just make sure that our bearings are running free and not having any drag put on them. So these guys are very small and easy to lose. I guess the only problem with opening them in that fashion is that it is very hard to get them back in once you have them out. But that's the whole point. So I'm going to use 1.1 and then I'm just going to use one of these 0.2s. So there's plenty of clearance there on the head of the screw to the bearing. I can feel it spinning nice and free there. So I'm just going to pop the 0.1 in between the 2 bearings. And this way the 2 bearings can spin independent. That way if one locks up or something like that, it's going to keep, the other one can still spin. And then the 0.2 just behind here, this will just give us a little bit of a gap on the actual plastic of the tensioner. And then we'll go ahead and put the nylon nut on. Again, we'll probably this is more of a, just to stop some of the flapping of the belt more so than an actual tensioner. We've got, don't forget, the eccentrics that do the rest of the belt tensioning. Okay, so that's pretty much completed that bag, and next up will be some more of section 9. There is an optional post, as you can see in the manual, that you can put in. I'm not going to be doing that right now. I'm just going with the standard build, but what we do have to do is attach the belt tensioner to the top deck. So here's our top deck, and you can see the little notch there for our belt tensioner. So we'll just slide that in there. So that's in, and then just a M3x6 is going to secure that. Okay. Now it also in this section is talking about putting our servo in. I'm actually still waiting on the servo that I'm going to be using for this car, but man, really beautiful built floating servo mount for the Destiny. So the idea being that we don't want any fixed components to the chassis introducing any kind of strange flex. So we try and mount everything to the center line as best as possible. Okay guys, so here we are. We've finished our steering rack, got our diff and our spool in. Just temporarily mounted that servo mount until I get my new servo. And we're still working through page 7, section 9. So what I'm going to do now is it's calling to put the top deck on. So we're going to need the top deck, and we're going to need 8 button heads. So there's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And we'll just go ahead and pop that in position. So we're going to slide it under the belt at the back and then slide it across. Pretty straightforward. We can fast forward through this. Okay, so now that the top deck's on, we actually will get a better simulation as to what the belt tension's going to be. So what I can feel is they're both pretty good. They're probably going to break in a bit as new belts do. They're probably a fraction tight if you're running a stock class, so you might want to go ahead and loosen those belts off a little bit. I'm just going to leave it as is for now and move on to the next section.